Thanks for taking the time once again to join us on the More People podcast. Joined today by one of my colleagues, Jake Tebbutt-Gilbert. Thanks for joining us, Jake. So, about you, how did you get into recruitment? What's your journey to date, Jake?
My journey's a bit different to most people. I'm not a graduate. I didn't go the traditional route of not knowing what I wanted to do coming out of university. My background is 8 years in the armed forces. Decided to leave at a certain point during COVID, then took 6 months or so to decide what I actually wanted to do. I was actually approached by a Rectorec who specialise in getting people out of the forces into recruitment. They've had a lot of success doing that, so took that route, did a sort of 6 months internship in the evenings, just doing resourcing, that sort of thing. Then seconded to a small little business, Forces Recruitment Solutions. Did a few weeks with them, working on some more resourcing stuff. Eventually left and got my first civilian job, which was as an internal recruiter for a small technology company in Peterborough that worked across, let's say, 10 different businesses. And it could have been from a marketing one side to working with a Mauritian bank. There was no in between. So it was really varied. COVID had its own challenges for us, and then decided to take the leap and join MorePeople.
So did you know coming out of the forces that recruitment was going to be what you would end up doing, or was that a crossroads, a bit of a reset, a bit of a loss as to what you might do next?
I wasn't entirely sure. I sort of gone along the line of Googling what does ex-forces people do when they leave, because I wasn't specialised realistically in anything apart from sort of the infantry. So did a few list searches on where to go, reached out to a few people on LinkedIn who specialised in that sort of thing. They gave me a few rough ideas. It was heavy on the sales front was why I was looking, but I didn't want to just be sales. So I started asking how they got into their jobs, and from there sort of backdated it and sort of went, actually recruitment would be a good idea. So it was part of that 6 month period of learning what I actually wanted to do, because it was COVID when I was leaving, so I had nothing but time, because the army wasn't doing anything apart from COVID testing. So between that, it was actually take a good look at what I wanted to do. And yeah, recruitment came to the top of the list as something I wanted to do, mostly from speaking with other recruiters, because I sort of was jealous of their job at the time. My idea of recruitment was different. I did 4 weeks of it, recruiting in shopping centres in the army, and I thought, yeah, this will be fun, something like that, completely different. Really enjoying it.
So you were recruiting at the time in shopping centres, recruiting for the army?
Yeah. Everyone gets told to do that at some point. It's good 4 weeks off. I recruited in Hampton Shopping Centre in Peterborough, so I was at home every night for 4 weeks, which was nice change of pace. But yeah, everyone gets a chance to do that if they're lucky. Just a good chance to talk to people, show off what you did at the time, try and, don't know how valuable it actually is for recruitment, but it's a good way of spreading awareness of what everyone does, that sort of thing.
I've always found it interesting that if you're in the forces, then you know that lifestyle, and if you're not in that life, then you guess and you infer, and you don't really know what it's like. And a bit like when you come into recruitment, it's never what people think it's actually going to be, no matter how much pain you go to explain it in an interview and show people around the office. Until you're in it, it's very hard to actually explain what it's like. And I know there are specialist recruitment companies that deal with, as you've said, forces people going into industry, and lots end up in the food industry as well as others. The skills that you picked up during those 6 to 8 years, was that, which bits did you think you were going to leverage and use as transferable skills into recruitment?
I think the biggest one was probably what I took away from my deployment to West Africa. It was public speaking. We were teaching classes of 20 to 500 people. So it was a real mix, and it was teaching people where English wasn't their first language. My biggest transfer was the ability to talk to people and get down to the same level or rise to the same level they are. That was my biggest transferable skill. That, with having a quite a broad knowledge of the world, has helped. If I'm working with an engineer who's emigrated from Africa or somewhere, the rest of the places in the world, I I know a little bit about the country. I've been there more than likely. So for me, it's having a good knowledge of the world and the ability to talk to people and actually communicate, because communication's one of the biggest skills in the armed forces by far. If you can't communicate, you can't do your job. So yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaways: communication, public speaking, and the confidence to just go out and speak to people.
Recruiters often moaned about for not communicating enough, whether you're on the client side of the fence or the candidate side of the fence. What's it like talking to engineers?
Anyone in engineering is rushed off their feet. It's probably the busiest job in manufacturing. It's often overlooked just how busy they are. There's always seems to be more emphasis on operations people, potentially even the commercial side, technical, but it's the engineers that will keep that factory running. So communication can be a challenge sometimes, because some of these businesses, they're not actually allowed their phones on site. They do a 12-hour shift, they do night shifts, they do day shifts, it mixes in between. Some of them run off quite low sleep sometimes. So communication can be a challenge, but it's always the fundamental. A good process is good communication between candidate and us. And I think with engineering, it's a real mix, but 9 times out of 10, the communication is quite good.
So what are these engineers actually doing then? If we go back to very, very basic first principles, I think the word engineer is one of those that's used in the vernacular for most people most of the time without necessarily understanding what it really means, because you've got engineers that mean build bridges. You've got engineers that work on cars, these unsung heroes that we've got in food manufacturing and produce and agriculture. What are they, in a broad sense, this is a short podcast, but in a broad sense, what are these people actually doing day to day?
So it's a real mix. So you've got, in my world, I'd think of it as an armed forces team. So you'd have your head of engineering, he's looking after strategic things, projects, as well as the day-to-day management of his team. And you've got this is a factory environment, so you've got a maintenance manager, he's looking after all the planned preventative maintenance of the machinery that actually keeps the factory running. He'll have an arm in the actual fabric of the building, site services, utilities. It could be as simple as getting the canteen the right level of pH in the water. And then you've got your actual shift engineers. These are the guys who will keep the factory going at all costs. Whether it's stripping down a gearbox in some downtime to get it to work so they don't have to buy a new one to save the company some money, or it could be first fixes, fabricating new parts, diagnosing high complex electrical issues. Without the engineers in a factory, it just doesn't run, which is often overlooked, but it's fixing, it's diagnosing, it's continuous improvement, making sure the machines keep getting better, not just running to fail, as well as projects as well. Continuous improvement, making sure the machines keep getting better, not just running to fail, as well as projects as well. An engineer is quite versatile. One minute they can be welding up a new bracket just for a sensor on a machine. The next minute they could be diagnosing why a robotic arm isn't working. So it's incredibly, incredibly varied.
But it's pretty sophisticated stuff as well. We're dealing with some companies across the supply chain that are involved in new machines, fit outs, automation, robotics, as you've alluded to there. Some of this stuff is absolutely at the cutting edge and is brand new and shiny and sexy stuff. This is not just fixing things that have gone wrong, right?
Yeah, there's some really, I'm still learning every day. It's no two factories are the same. Some factories will have some kit that is from the 80s and is getting on a bit. The next will be doing vaccinations inside an egg using an automated arm. Incredibly complex precision engineering on bulk 10,000 times a day. So it's a real mix, but some of the technology now is incredible. Stuff that Ocado are using for their robotics is amazing. Some of the businesses we work with as well, what they're doing, replacing some of the labor elements. It could be a simple robot moving pallets one place to another, but it's doing that 10,000 times a week. It's a very busy process, and some of the kit that is being used, whether that be vertical farming or high-end horticulture, is amazing. Very, very special.
It's cool to see when we go to shows. We were through Logistica in the level 1, which is all the machinery. There's some incredible stuff in there. I know you've been out to trade shows and looked at kit on the ground.
Yeah,
a lot to learn.
Yeah, we went with one of the businesses we work with as a guest to the PPMA show in Birmingham for the first time. Absolutely huge. Was not expecting the entire venue, but no, it was massive to see just the variation of machinery across not just the food sector, but produce and some industrial stuff as well. You know, some of the way these pumps and pipes work is mind bending to someone who's got a very limited engineering background. Just seeing how some of these things work and explaining and the complexities that actually go into not just manufacturing it, but then looking after it and then servicing it for the next 10 years afterwards is an incredibly long process involving hundreds of people that most people overlook. If you buy a meal deal from Tesco's, you have no idea how that's been made. You think it's just some people on a line putting it together, but it's not. There's an incredible amount of automation that goes into that and about 20 different processes.
It's not going anywhere anytime soon, is it? Given the national insurance increases, the minimum wage increases, the just in general raw material prices, automation is one of those words that's thrown around a lot when we have our exec networking dinners. It's mentioned all the time, to solve some of these people issues. So it's going to get increasingly more sophisticated and bigger as time goes by, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just going to keep going. I think engineering is in a very interesting place. It had a few challenges 5 years ago. COVID took a bit of a turn on where things have gone, but from an engineering point of view, it's just going to get bigger and better. The more technology is replaced with the newer bits of kit, the more companies update and better projects are done. It's just going to get bigger and better. If you're an engineer in the food sector, it is a job for life now. It used to be you could float in between different sectors if you wanted to, but no one seems to be doing that now. People like the food sector just because of the continuous improvement with new machinery. You hear of some businesses spending £40 million on new lines of machinery. Not all manufacturing does that. So the food industry is really at the forefront of everything, I think. And a lot of industries are about 10 years behind when it comes to machinery.
One nice positive to finish on.
I know.
You're in the right place. Thanks, Jake.